Thanks for stopping to listen to our workshop on MLA versus APA, what we are calling the ultimate showdown. This presentation is going to cover the goals of academic integrity, when to cite or not to cite. We'll also go over the newest MLA edition, which is MLA 9th edition, and the newest APA edition, which is APA 7th edition. We'll talk about similarities and differences between the two, as well as common mistakes and how to write inclusively. And then this part won't be recorded, but we'll leave time for those of you listening in real time to ask questions. Kenyon's statement on academic integrity can be found in its entirety on our website, but a couple key points to keep in mind include respecting the difficult work you and others do by citing when appropriate, being responsible for learning how to write and cite appropriately, and acknowledging that there are 3 tiers of offense at Kenyon, as the ramifications of plagiarism can vary from situation to situation. A great rule to stick to for citing is if you didn't come up with the idea on your own, you need to give credit to whomever did. MLA's 9th edition is put out by the Modern Language Association, and you can access it as a searchable ebook for free from Chalmers Library. MLA Style Center also consistently updates their blog with new information and includes information on some of their other publications as well, including a workbook on going more in depth into MLA. The biggest changes to the 9th edition are, again, including guidelines for research papers, which was missing from the 8th edition, including a section on inclusive language like the one APA provided in their 7th edition, providing more details on citing materials, especially on the Works Cited page, and offering a section on plagiarism, which we just talked about. Oops, it went too far for me there. Some general points to keep in mind as you write and cite using MLA are that you can and should refer to primary source authors by their full name when writing it the first time. So for example, if you're writing about Charlotte Perkins Gilman and the yellow wallpaper, you want to actually write out her full name, Charlotte Perkins Gilman, and then every time after that, you can refer to her as Perkins Gilman or Gilman, depending on which your professor recommends. You should double space everything and use Times New Roman size 12 font. You can talk to your professor about using a more inclusive font, a sans serif font that's helpful for your peers with dysgraphia or dyslexia. My favorite is size 11 Trebuchet, which is comparable to size 12 Times New Roman. In MLA, you can use more creative and descriptive language. APA is more for matter-of-fact reporting. And in MLA, you can and should use first person in most instances, which is I, me, my, and us, we, ours. APA 7th edition is put out by the American Psychological Association. You want to be careful when you're looking for APA in regards to citations that you look for APA style, as that will take you to the official APA style website as opposed to American Psychological Association's more general website. The library keeps a copy on reserve for students needing a quick consultation, but you can also get citation support from the library research desk and from the Writing Center tutors. APA Style also updates their blog regularly, providing guidance on a host of the current concerns writers have, including sample papers so you can visualize formatting guidelines. It's important to note, too, that APA and MLA both have Instagram and Twitter, and that we follow them at Kenyon WCC on both Instagram and Twitter. Some general points to keep in mind as you write and cite using APA. The first is that you should refer to authors by their first initial instead of their first name on the rare occasion where you need to refer to them at all by that first initial instead of just their last name. So in places like the reference page. Just as in MLA, you should double space everything and use Times New Roman size 12 font or one of those sans serif fonts if your professor's okay with it. Unlike MLA and APA, you should stick to plain language, as APA is for that matter-of-fact reporting. And you should also stick to third person, she, he, they, and theirs, avoiding first person, I, me, my. The best thing to use, the most inclusive pronoun to use is they, the singular they in APA. And we'll talk more about inclusivity in a bit. In-text citations for APA and MLA are a little bit different. I'll go over MLA first, and then APA. In MLA, when you introduce the author in the sentence, you don't have to include their name in the end of sentence citation. In MLA, you can cite direct quotes, paraphrasing, and summary, and you can use sources from any period in time, but should check in on your professor to see if they have expectations for style of source, genre of source, or age of source. APA is a little bit different. You should never refer to the author by their first name, even if you're introducing them, which is rare. You should use direct quotes very sparingly and cite paraphrasing and summary mostly, which means you won't need page numbers. More on that in a minute. And newer sources should be used 5 years or less. Different professors have different expectations, but just keep this rule of thumb that if your source is old enough to be in the fourth grade, if it were a human, if it were a human, then it's too old of a source. Let's talk about page numbers. In MLA, if there are 1 or 2 authors, you should write all family last names plus the page number you're citing, whether or not it's a direct quote or a paraphrase or summary. So, for example, Jones and Kennedy 12. If there are 3 or more authors, you should write the first author's last or family name plus et al., which is Latin for and others, and the page number, so Jones et al. 23. You should avoid using commas in MLA in text citations between author name and page number. That's the #1 mistake I see when students write in MLA, is that they put unnecessary commas in MLA in text citations. Don't do it. In APA, on the other hand, if there are 1 or 2 authors, you should write all family last names plus the year the source was published. You should only use page numbers if it's a direct quote, and page numbers come at the end. So Jones and Kennedy, the year, which is 2022, and then page 12. For paraphrasing and summary, you leave out the page numbers. If there are 3 or more authors, you follow the et al. Rule that's the same for MLA. You should write the first author's last or family name plus et al. And the year of the source. If it's a direct quote, you can also include page numbers. Unlike MLA and APA, you always use commas between materials in APA in-text citations. Other common in-text citations to keep in mind: if the source has no page number, but it's either MLA or APA, and there's a line or paragraph number, you can cite that information instead. For MLA, you should cite the next most relevant thing, usually an abbreviated title of the article in quotation marks. For APA, you don't need a page number unless quoting directly, so my best advice is just to not quote directly and paraphrase or summarize instead. Another thing that you'll see sometimes is a source has a reputable organization as an author, so you should cite the organization in place of the author. For example, World Health Organization. The first time you want to use the full title, which is World Health Organization, but every time after that you could just use WHO. So in MLA, for example, WHO 12, in APA, WHO, and actually that's backwards, it should be, hang on, I'll fix it right now. It should be WHO 2022, page 12. If it's a direct quote only. Oh. So I fixed it for that last one. For direct quotes, you want to do WHO 2022, page 12, or for paraphrasing and summary, WHO 2022. Now let's talk about our works cited page. For MLA, you will be using a works cited page. Note that you should only call it works cited if you're citing more than one source. Otherwise, it's a work cited page. This is taken directly from the MLA handbook, and you can sort of see the important notes about margins, the hanging indent, and double spacing all of your sources. Double spacing for your works cited page and your references page in APA are gonna be the same. So what goes into a works cited entry? Well, there are a couple things. Most works cited entries will have 1 and 2, as well as 7 through 9. They won't all have 3 through 6. But these are all important things to keep in mind. So as you go and cite, you can sort of use this as a checklist to see what of these things you have. Works cited typical citation rules to keep in mind are write full dates in MLA in the European style, which is the number of the date, the month, and followed by the year. You should always put article, song, and chapter titles in quotation marks, and you should only use italics for big sources like full books, movies, journals, music, albums, and artwork. So here's an example citation I'll go over with you. First is the author's last or family name, followed by their full first name. Then is the title of their article, followed by a period. The title is in quotation marks. Then in italics is the journal itself, followed by a comma, which includes the volume number, followed by a comma, and the issue number, followed by a comma, and then the year of publication. Lastly, you include the page numbers that you are citing that the article is printed on. So this article runs from page 27 to page 36. You end with a period. All citations in MLA and APA on the works cited pages and the reference pages will end with a period. For APA, you're going to see things a teeny bit differently. You'll see always at least source areas 1 through 3, pardon me, and sources areas 8 through 9. 4 through 7 won't always be applicable. Pardon me. Just as in APA, MLA, there are a couple rules for APA. Only include the author's first initials. Do not put the article title in quotation marks as you would in MLA. And you only use italics for big sources like full books, movies, journal titles, music albums, and artwork. So let's go over this citation together. First, you have the author's last or family name, followed by a comma and their first and middle initials. Then in parentheses, you put the date of publication. Then you write the title of the resource without quotation marks. And you mention that it's in this additional source that the editors have created. You put comma after the editor's information and the title of the additional source in italics. You then include the page numbers in parentheses, followed by a period, followed by the publisher, which in this case is West Virginia University Press. There are a couple things to keep in mind for inclusivity in MLA and APA. Both MLA and APA are dedicated to encouraging the use of bias-free language in students' writing. So some ways to incorporate this bias-free writing include using the singular they pronoun instead of the gendered he or she, using relevant information instead of broad generalizations. For example, if you think about age groups, instead of writing young children or children, you can write the specific age group like 8 to 10-year-olds that's being studied. You should use person-first language when possible. For example, instead of focusing on someone's diagnosis, focus on their personhood. So instead of writing diabetic you should write person with type 1 diabetes. Kenyon's Writing Center also has a handout on avoiding sexist, ableist, and racist language that you can find on the homepage of our website. So we do have a handout that you can look over. It is on our website, and it has a couple of additional differences between MLA and APA. We cannot recommend highly enough that you look at that handout. If you have questions or want a copy of this presentation, you can email me at the listed email address. Thank you.